When you work as a therapist, as an educator, as a professional in the world of children or families, I think that it's really quite normal to have a higher bar for your own parenting and beat yourself up more mercilessly than people who don't. And I think there are many good reasons for that, right? We understand the stakes. We see in our everyday world how the wheels can come off the proverbial bus when the parenting support that children need and require to thrive isn't present. That being said, today you are going to meet a trained therapist, Tiffany, who's a student in our Parent Code certification program. Tiffany's worked as a family therapist for many years. She has successfully raised children. And what I hope that you will find comfort in this episode is she still worries. She still has fears that are what I call future pacing problems for her children, meaning in our minds, we start to imagine all of the ways that our parenting wasn't enough. Now, while Tiffany's child that she's speaking about in this episode is older, I think so much of this conversation applies to you, whether you have younger children or teenagers or grown children, because it illustrates how, as peaceful parents, it's really useful to examine the stories that we are telling ourselves and look for evidence of whether or not they are actually true. You're going to see or hear how it's done in this episode with Tiffany and Sarah. Enjoy.
Hey, Sarah. So I am a part of like the JI Class 166. And for me, with doing this work, I'm always concerned that maybe I missed the opportunity to implement these new things that we're learning because I have a 19-year-old. So I guess I'm just looking for any kind of support with how I can maintain and continue going with my 19-year-old. Sometimes I feel a little bit of guilt that maybe I didn't do certain things with him. And then with digging deeper as being how I was parented, that's its own set of issues. But for the most part, I really just want support of where should I be in this like kind of I just relinquished kind of control, I guess, of his life, even though that sounds pretty bad, to now I'm like this advisor of, hey, are you open for feedback? I have something that I could say about that. But I'm in like this limbo kind of a moment of where he's not really sure what he wants to do as far as like his future. And how do I support him with still having my boundaries, which I haven't set.
Yeah. Oh, well, I feel this big time because you are at this kind of pivotal moment of parenting because you have had 19 years of raising this beautiful boy of yours. And now, as he is somewhere within a stone's throw of leaving the nest, you want to make sure that you were the parent that you wanted to be. I hear you saying you have some doubts that perhaps you didn't show up for him in some of the ways that he might have needed to help him grow and thrive optimally. And I also heard you say that even though it is its own separate discussion, some of your family of origin stuff that you brought into your parenting showed up in your parenting and or makes you want to be sure that he feels more seen, more loved, more supported than what you perhaps had when you were growing up. Is that an accurate reflection of what you're bringing to me today?
Yeah, very.
Okay. All right. Well, I know you said it's a separate discussion, but if you are willing, I would love to spend just a minute or two talking about what younger you felt when you were a child. What was it like being you growing up in your home? What were you lacking?
This is not going to be a therapy session, Sarah. Oh, like I'm tearing up. I think presence. And I talk about this in our like individual coaching circles that may be what I don't know if it's suppressed or not. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of the words to say. I'm not sure if I suppressed it, but as I'm answering these questions and doing the work and it comes up about how I was parented, I feel like I can't recall all of the things. And then sometimes I get full of emotion. Like it feels like a thermometer, like it's coming up or maybe even throw up. I don't know. But as soon as it hits like here, then I'm like, nope, not in Starbucks. No, I will not start crying in Starbucks while I'm here trying to get a healthy amount of background noise to keep me awake, but still stay uber focused with my headphones on. I'm not going to do this. But sometimes as I'm answering the questions and I'm being, honest, it's like, was my mom there? And because it sounds like I'm saying that she was neglectful, and now I have to look up the definition that, yeah, maybe she was, but it wasn't with ill intent or malice. It was her working, from 6 a.m. to midnight. And so when I asked my son, did I show up? I guess there is some subconscious of like, they didn't show up for me, right? Like my dad just did not. And my mom did when she could, which just wasn't enough. Like I'm not upset with her at it. And I can have that coherent narrative about here's what happened, here's where I am, here's the result, here's what I want to do with my parenting.
Yeah.
So, not present. I think that's probably what I'll say.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. I know that you did not anticipate tears coming up either here or in Starbucks. And I promise you, friend, nobody wants you throwing up in Starbucks. And yet, what you describe is absolutely real, particularly if we grew up in a home where we felt invisible, where we felt that our needs didn't matter, where we felt that people were not showing up for us in the ways that we deserved to be shown up for. Oftentimes we come to establish a limiting belief about ourselves. And that limiting belief is, I don't deserve to be shown up for. And at the same time, we know how crummy that felt. And it makes perfect sense that throughout your life, you have suppressed a lot of that emotion because had it come out, you would have had to deal with it. But if little you was learning, I don't get to deal with it because I don't have the support I need, it is only going to reinforce your desire to suppress it. So I actually, first of all, want to celebrate the fact that your internal thermometer is rising. The tears come up, the big feelings want to come out, whether here, Starbucks, or anywhere else you may be. I think this is a beautiful part of the healing process because all of the feelings you've been stuffing down for as many years as you've been stuffing them down, they're still there. Our body has absorbed them, but our body was not meant to absorb those beliefs. The first bit of love and compassion I'm going to give to you is you deserved when you were a child to be seen and safe and soothed and secure by your family of origin. That was not something that you should have had to provide for yourself. Now, transitioning to your son, this beautiful 19-year-old boy of yours, I know already from what you've said that you are already doing the brave work of saying, even though I didn't know what to do with all those feelings, I know they felt bad enough that I want better for my son. And I don't want him to experience the pain that I felt growing up. So maybe I didn't do it perfectly, but did I do it well enough so that he can still reap the benefits of a secure attachment? I'm going to pause for a second and say, how's this landing so far?
It's landing. I actually sent him this attachment style quiz. Like, can you take that? Let me see what kind of parent I was. Like, I don't know, but yeah, it's landing.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I hear your desire to do the attachment style quizzes and to check in and all that. And believe me, my friend, you are already light years above and beyond where most people on the planet are, and that you care enough to be checking in. And that already indicates to me that odds are really good that throughout his 19 years, you were checking in with him. Perhaps you didn't have all the fancy names of all the attachment preferences and that sort of thing, but you were checking in because you wanted to be present in a way that your own family wasn't for you. And when you get curious, when you have those feelings of guilt that come up about maybe I didn't do it, I'm curious how much of that comes from, and I've got my two little hands up here to represent two different things, your belief as a child of I am not enough versus actual memories of your adult parenting of your son of perhaps I haven't been enough. What do you think about that?
Um, never thought about it. Uh, I guess having to be put on the spot now to think about it, probably more so. I guess it comes from fear of like, my memories of my childhood, and so overcompensating for lacking in his other parent, overcompensating for maybe what I didn't get, or feeling guilty or like questioning, doubting if I did show up.
Yeah.
So probably from definitely not from my parenting, but maybe from the memories
Yeah.
or the lack of.
Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, a lack of memories in childhood isn't always, but often is associated with any one of the insecure attachment preferences or styles. So it makes sense that you don't necessarily remember all of the details. It doesn't mean you for sure had an insecure attachment, but if you bring that into your own parenting, it makes sense that you want to be more secure than what you experienced. So I am going to ask if we can ever so briefly, and again, of course, this is way bigger than we can do in 15 minutes, but I'm wondering if you had something to say to younger you, what was it that younger you desperately wanted to hear from heart to heart? If you could wave a magic wand, what was it you wanted to hear when you were a child?
That was not that's not what I signed up for. Um, I don't know if it's what I wanted to hear. Um, I probably have to journal about that and like find something within this week, but I think I just wanted them to show up. I think that's it. Like just wanted them to show up. You look around, I went to like private schools and stuff. There was like one of each grade from kindergarten to eighth grade. You knew the parents who were there and who weren't. And it wasn't like everybody's parents were there, but there were some who were always there. I just, like, can you be a chaperone at anything? Can you show up to like the school bazaar? I'm old. like, you know, um, that's it. Just show up. And I do have some memories, but it just show up. So
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to make a guess. Did little Tiffany have some version of a need to be told you are worth showing up for? And I'm going to be there for you.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's transfer this to your son for a moment as we get ready to wrap up our time today. And I realize, again, this is a very big discussion, and I just want to meet you with love and empathy and compassion and surround you and all of the goodness that you always did deserve and you still deserve right this second. Do you have memories of showing up for your son? Not perfectly, but are there any events that you remember going to for him? Are there things you did to be present in his life?
Everyone. Like I remember he's was a part of this program. It's called Boys Hope, Girls Hope, and they just prepare them for college. And it was like maybe his sophomore year in high school. And I volunteered. They asked for volunteers. This is crazy. It's my mom was never a chaperone. Oh my God, I have a client in two. I had to get myself together. And I volunteered as one of the chaperones. And I remember asking him, like, because I'm hanging out with the people who facilitated this trip, and I'm like, "Am I the only parent that's here?" And like, I still have a relationship with these people, and this to this day, they just asked me to join like their board or their committee or something because I believed in what they were doing, and they were like, "Yeah, you're the only parent." And I show up at every single thing, and I asked my son, like, "Is this too much? Like, am I like hovering? Is it helicopterish?" He was like, "Yeah, it's a bit much, but you're kind of cool, so like it's straight. Like you can be here, it's fine." Uh, and I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." Uh, I didn't know I would be like the only parent, but I thought other parents would come, but he's like, "Nah, I don't." He didn't feel uncomfortable because at that moment, I'm just like, "Are you uncomfortable that I'm here?" I'm on the other side. They had the guys and the girls separated, so I'm with the girls, in the dorm room, which was funny. But we spent like a weekend up there so they could get that experience, and I chaperone every trip. Like I'm at every trip since he's been in school. I'm at every trip. If he wants to try it, I'm signing him up for it. My only rule is that you just kind of see it through to the end of it. And then, we can quit, but you can't quit in the middle unless there's something and he stuck to that. But I don't, there isn't anything like if he was playing basketball, then I am there doing concessions. I'm there at his game, but I'm helping out the rest of the time so he can continue to stay to watch JV and varsity play. He played football. I am at I've never missed, I don't miss games. I just didn't. So.
Tiffany, first of all, your tears are so incredibly welcome here. And you're bringing up mine too, because I heard you say, I wanted my parents to show up for me when I was a kid. And I also, here are my little hands again. I also heard you say, when I asked about your son, I showed up for every single one of his events. I was there. And the proverbial icing on the cake is when you checked in with him and said, is this too much? Is this too much like helicopter parenting? Does it feel overwhelming to you? Should that, you know what, you're kind of cool. So yeah, it's a little much, but you're kind of cool. And it's okay that you're here. That is child's way, especially at the age that he was when he said that, to say, I love you, Mama, and I am so glad you are showing up for me in this way. How does that land with you?
It feels kind of good actually, even though with I don't know, the tears feel like a little bit of a revelation, like a release for sure, but definitely a revelation that like, yeah, I'm a pretty damn good mom, right? Like,
Yes, you are. Amen and hallelujah, my friend. Yes, you are. Oh, thank you so much for unpacking this with me. I love how you are showing up for yourself. And there is one other beautiful thing that happens when you have this revelation. There's somebody else in the room chatting with us, and it is your inner child. When you see yourself showing up for your son, said, hey, I get to heal with you because I am still part of you. So thank you for bringing her and being willing to bring her into this conversation and through all of the beautiful ways that you showed up for your child.
So Tiffany is a therapist and supports people in her work. I imagine she's quite accomplished. She presents with so much gravitas and groundedness and wholeness. And so to watch you supporting her and to see her trusting, like what I know about those of us who are the helpers is it can be 10 times harder to allow ourselves to be supported because our identity is so freaking committed to wait, no, this is my seat here. She was awesome. It was really a beautiful conversation. It didn't go where I thought it was going to go, Sarah, because, we get this question a lot from our students who have children who are older or who are adults. Is it too late? Can I repair something that's years in the making? How do I recover this relationship when my child has gone no contact? But that was not the case here. This was a story, a narrative it seemed to me, and obviously, Tiffany more deeply than we heard in this 15-minute coaching session, but it seemed to me a beautiful example of how our limiting beliefs create our reality, which may not look like actually reality. So to start off with, can you define what a limiting belief is?
Yes, a limiting belief is a belief that we acquired about ourselves, usually according to the research, between the time we were either 2 and 7 or 2 and 9. So when we were a little kid, we came to believe that something was absolutely true about ourselves. And we carry that belief forward into every interaction that we have from that point forward. And we judge our relationship to self on it. We judge our relationships to others on it. And it's limiting by definition because it holds us back from seeing what reality actually is.
Mm. When you're working with clients, how do you uncover these limiting beliefs? Like, is it what we just saw, where it's really about like actively listening to that inner child narrative? What happened to them? Like, what's that process like for you?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of listening. One of the things that we practice in our classes, of course, is a lot of active listening. We talk about it early and often. And it really is a skill that we can develop to hear the spoken word as well as the unspoken word and to ask questions that will help. Some people talk about like the layers of the onion. I prefer to think of it as the layers of the evolving flower, the opening flower, the blooming flower, because there's always more going on than what we see on the outside. So when we listen, okay, what's being said? What's actually meant? And then below that, what's actually felt, the felt reality for this person. When we can listen well enough to look at the deepest level inside, that's where the gold is for being able to help people uncover their limiting beliefs.
Can you talk me through the connection? Like, how does a limiting belief that we've carried since childhood kind of like become our biggest fear? Because that's really what, like when I listened to this interview, what I saw playing out was this narrative that her biggest fear was happening despite all this evidence to the contrary. So, how are those two things connected?
Yeah. So I'll take a really common example that will probably resonate with a lot of people. Let's pretend that when I was a little kid, I learned that I'm essentially invisible around here. Nobody pays attention to me unless I am really extra loud, extra ill behaved, or perhaps I'm extra good, quote unquote, air quotes, right? I'm extra well behaved. I have to really be extreme in order for anybody to even see that I am here. Otherwise, I get ignored. Really. Now, let's play that forward in the different ways that that can manifest. For the adult or the parent who had this limiting belief, I am invisible. Let's say I now have a child and I go to my child and say, hey, please remember to put away your shoes. And lo and behold, the child doesn't put away their shoes. I suddenly feel as if I am invisible. Nobody listens to me. Nobody pays attention to me. So my options are either to become so loud and so scary that the child has no choice but to pay attention to me because I'm terrifying to them, or I become so hyper diligent in, again, air quotes, good mothering or good parenting. Oh, I'm not going to let this bother me. I'll just clean up for them and they don't have to do it. Excuse, excuse, excuse. Neither of those extremes is healthy. Either I'm scary or I'm people pleasing to the point of my own self detriment. Now, my invitation as a parent coach is to say, when and where and how did you learn that you're invisible? And is that still true?
Yeah.
Maybe it actually is. I don't want to deny anybody's reality, but odds are really good that there's something else going on. And when I can help people come to their own realization, by the way, this is not me telling them, but when I can help them uncover their own realization, actually, I do get to take up space
Mm.
and I can learn some more peaceful and or more effective ways to be heard. Not only can I step into a new belief, which is I'm visible, I matter, my voice matters, then I can develop a much healthier dynamic, not only with myself for myself, but also with my family around me.
We have to, or we get to intentionally seek out the evidence that proves what we do want. This blew my mind when I first heard it 20 years ago. Our brains are why they have a negativity bias. The brain is going to constantly be seeking evidence and validation to hold on to the limiting beliefs that were formed early on. So that's going to happen automatically. We're going to see the one time out of 10 that our child rejects us, and the rejection story will come back, the abandonment story, whatever it is, and not remember the 10 times that they came in for cuddles and wanted a story and came to show us their art and all the things. And so it becomes it's like a muscle, right? That we have to kind of purposely like let it in, let the good in. It's so hard sometimes.
It is. And we have to remember that the negativity bias is actually there to help us. If I go outside right now and start to cross the street, I need my body to assume that a car is coming. That reminds me I should check to see if a car is coming. So negativity bias is actually a helper, except for when it does exactly what you talked about, Kiva, which is I'm going to assume that my limiting belief in conjunction with the negativity bias means my child doesn't love me or whatever the story might be that I'm telling myself. So as a parent coach, part of my role is to help you rewrite a new story where you're still safe. We're not sending you out into traffic, right? And you have something that's going to be more conducive to more joy in your life.
Mm. Tiffany brought up creating a coherent narrative, right? This idea that we can kind of process what happened to us as a child through our adult lens with compassion, with empathy, with understanding. Ideally, I like to say to like drop the bag of rocks, like we're carrying this lineage, we're carrying these generational patterns. And at some point, it's useful to create a narrative that allows us to let them go to the best of our ability. The other really interesting thing I saw in this conversation is that often starts in the logical brain, in the rational brain. And it's kind of a story that we tell ourselves. My mom did her best. Tiffany said her mom was working from 6 a.m. to midnight. My goodness, right? As an adult, we can see that differently than we would have as a child. But then there was this drop where I literally watched her let that in. Like, it's not just a story anymore. That was so cool.
It was. It was. I was goosebumpy observing this in her.
Yeah. She talked about not having many memories of childhood. That's something I hear a lot too. Do any children have a lot of memories of their childhood? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, a lot do, but part of the reason that it's more rare is that typically those of us who had a tricky childhood, and more specifically, any form of insecure attachment with our parents or caregivers, we learned that it was safer emotionally to forget the hard memories than to hang on to them. So statistically, a couple of things. Number one, you are more likely to remember your childhood if you had a more secure attachment with your family of origin. And a whole lot of other things can play into it as well. But some of us do remember the painful things because they did leave an imprint on us in a different kind of way that accessed a different part of the brain that said, I need to remember this because it's going to be my narrative for keeping myself safe later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. And even like thinking to my own children, and I've talked to them about this, and we've obviously had our highs and lows in our family, and they don't really recall the period around my divorce, say. They don't really, but they'll bring up this very esoteric memory of, doing stickers and coloring underneath the Christmas tree when they were 4 and 5. And so I think that that's really sweet. And also something that, I don't know, we can make okay. Like, we don't have to put so much pressure on ourselves as parents that it's all going to be perfect, that they're going to feel securely attached all the time. And that if we're just doing a little bit better and finding those moments of joy and shared experiences, we're still creating a better path.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for sure, I want to highlight for anybody who may have gone into panic mode when they heard,
Yeah.
oh, might have forgotten, that maybe they might have forgotten because it wasn't a secure attachment. You know what? I have no idea what I had for lunch yesterday. So let's just normalize that we forget things because the brain has only so much capacity. So it's not just that. It is an incredibly complex field that even the best scientists in the world don't completely understand because memory is so deeply complex.
Hmm. Last thing I want to touch on is just that you're a cool mom moment. And how fantastic it is to have the kind of relationship with our 19-year-old children, and just such a testament for this kind of work. The kids can be like, yeah, it's fine, you're cool. I mean, isn't that the goal for all of us? We just want to be
Uh, for sure. Or like if we could have a saying framed behind all of our heads that's like, yeah, I've got this. My kid said I'm cool. Like that's all we need to know.
Sarah, your coaching sessions are always so profound and interesting. I can't wait to talk to you for the next one. Gratitude to you as always, my friend.
Thank you.